Dear friends, today's gospel passage presents us Jesus praying in a lonely place along with his disciples. In this chapter from Luke's Gospel, chapter 9, we find Jesus was involved in intense ministry along with his disciples. The chapter opens with all the disciples sent 2 by 2 to the villages and towns. And Jesus, after getting them back, gathered together, and there was a big crowd waiting for Jesus in the wilderness. And he provides them bread. There were more than 5,000 people, men alone 5,000, excluding women and children. And after that, most probably Jesus wanted to be alone, and he was praying with his disciples. Now here is a question comes to our mind. Jesus as the Son of God, the Messiah, does he require to pray? We might get a question in our minds. Jesus, being the Son of God, does he have the need of praying? And then why does he pray? We know that if we go through the Gospels, we will find Jesus always trying to find space for prayer, going to the mountain, to the wilderness, to the valley, to the lonely place, deserted place, Garden of Gethsemane. Jesus was always praying in communion with the Father. Here is a solution for our reflection and our problems. Dear friends, in our daily lives, after the example of Jesus, we must spend time in prayer. I do not say that our prayers are like Hail Mary, Our Father, long rosaries or reciting breviary or many other vocal prayers we recite. But here prayer is in deep communion with the divine. We all know that human beings are not just flesh and blood, the appearance we have. We are practically 90% spiritual beings, and therefore we need to be energized from within by our contact with the divine. And that is what we learn from Jesus. From time to time he was praying so that he may be strengthened. As we understand, Jesus fully divine and fully human. As a person fully human, he required that kind of space for prayer. Dear friends, when we think about prayer, what is this prayer? You know, prayer is our deep connection with the divine. We all know that after a day's work, we are tensed, we are tired, sometimes we are defeated from within, we feel insecurities, uncertainties, we feel dejected, we feel pain and tiredness. And what do? Of course, we take rest, we take good food, we go out for some entertainment, we are with our friends, but there is also a fundamental requirement for human being to be alone with God that will energize us. That divine contact and communion, we can call it in different names, we need not call it prayer. It could be divine contact, it could be communion, it could be communication, union with the divine spirit. We all know that we human beings have that great spark of the divine. We Christians, we believe that we have that divine indwelling within us. And talking to God, we are strengthened, energized, empowered. That is what we learn. You know, if you go to the Catechism of the Catholic Church, you will find in the 4th section different types of prayer. There is a prayer of adoration, there is a prayer of thanksgiving, prayer of praise, prayer of petition, prayer of intercession, whatever. But then ultimately it boils down to one thing, that we human beings, if we want to be energized and strengthened in our daily life, apart from our food, rest and entertainment and recreation, we require also that time with the divine so that we may be strengthened and strong from within to face all our challenges and difficulties of life. Now, after prayer, Jesus asks a tremendous question to his disciples. Who do the people say that I am? That was not required for Jesus to ask his disciples, what kind of opinion people have about me? Actually, Jesus wanted to know from his disciples, what kind of message am I giving you, or what sort of understanding do you have about me? Of course, the disciples replied, you are one of the prophets, you are Elijah, you are John the Baptist. These are normal expressions of the people that are found, because they were always expecting a great prophet during that time. Always they were expecting a savior to liberate them from their slavery to Romans. But here, Jesus' final question to his own disciples, who do you say that I am? And there Peter comes with a great answer. You are the Christ of God. That is a difference. When we are in prayer, we really are capable of understanding Jesus as our Savior, Jesus as our Messiah. He is the Son of God. That is the assurance we get from within when we really enter into that deep communication with the Father. Now the second part of the gospel is very important here. When Jesus was narrating what would happen to him, he warns them, the Son of Man will be rejected, he will be killed, and then he will be raised. He will have to suffer. What does that mean? Very often, we might think that Christianity is only suffering, pain, crown of thorns and crucifixion and carrying the cross. Is it Christianity? No one is ready to bear the cross unless for a particular cause. Now Jesus' message was very clear. And what is that message? Jesus' message from the beginning was the message of love and message of forgiveness. Dear friends, when we apply it to our life is never a bed of roses. It is a bed of roses perhaps in our imagination. It happens that when a young man falls in love with a young girl, a boy falls in love with a young girl, then they might have some imagination that life is going to be a bed of roses. Absolutely not true. Now let us imagine in our own life, how many times, if we have to literally, authentically love our partners, love our family members, our children, our parents, how difficult it is. There are no shortcuts to love. No shortcuts to love at all. It is going to be an excruciating, painful experience for us to really love. That is real love. Falling in love is quite different from loving. We need to understand that. Falling in love, when someone is very beautiful, handsome, talented, we fall in love. That's very easy. But loving is difficult. And that's why Jesus very clearly indicates here, the Son of Man will have to suffer, will be rejected, and will be killed. That is the essence of Christianity Jesus is giving us. Very clear in our life. And that's why any kind of commitment, what is called Christian commitment, whether it is to family, to an institution, to priesthood, or to any person in our life, is going to be difficult. Because Jesus is calling us for authentic love experience. That's why Jesus very clearly said in the Gospel of John, there is no greater love than laying down one's life for one's friends. No greater love. That means one must be ready to lay down one's life for one's friends. And then the conditions follow. Jesus says, if you want to be my follower, my disciple, you have three things to do. That is, deny yourself, take up your cross, and then follow. Now let us reflect on these words of Christ. Deny yourself. This particular word denial, we refer it to very often to Peter. Peter denied Jesus 3 times. Peter said, I will always follow you. Jesus said, before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times. And when Peter was asked, are you not the one? Are you not a Galilean? Are you not his friend? Peter said, no, I do not know him. What you say, I do not know. I am not his friend, I do not know him. And what does that mean? Literally, Jesus uses that same word, deny yourself. What is this denial? What is denying myself? Dear friends, in our daily life, when we are ego-centered, filled with pride, filled with self-importance, it is so difficult to deny ourselves. That is why we need to say from time to time, no to me. And only when I say no to me, then I am capable of becoming the disciple of Christ. And that's why Jesus says very powerfully, no. You know, we always say yes. Yes to my egoism, yes to my pride, yes to my anger, yes to my greed, yes to all my passions. But Jesus says, if you want to be my follower, you need to say no, deny all that is in you. That's why denial. The second is, take up your cross. What does that mean, taking up the cross? You know, it was long before Jesus himself died on the cross, he used that term cross. Take up your cross. I will give you a short history of the meaning of the cross. It was when Jesus was 12 years old, there was a revolution around Nazareth. A person called Judas of Galilee revolted against the Roman Empire and he attacked the Roman armory at Sophia, that was a village 4 miles away from Nazareth. The consequence was terrible. You know what the Romans did? As a consequence of this attack on the Roman armory, they destroyed that completely the village of Sophia, and the inhabitants were sold as slaves, and more than 2,000 men, they were revolutionaries, were literally crucified on the roads of Sophia. You know, today we speak of tortures, right? Today we speak of violence, but Romans were more violent people. And that's why that was a sign for those people. If you revolt against our regime, you will have to suffer this kind of cross. 2,000 people were crucified. They were killed and tortured. Jesus had that in mind when he said, if you want to follow me, take up your cross. Dear friends, we are not tortured every day. You know, sometimes men are tortured by their wives, or wives are tortured by their husbands. Sometimes children torture their parents. Sometimes our family members torture us. Our friends torture us in one way or the other. Jesus says there is no shortcut to life and love. You have to carry your daily cross. And that is the meaning of the cross. We cannot run away from the cross. We need to carry our daily cross. That is the meaning. And finally, Jesus says, follow me. And what is this following Jesus? Jesus' new commandment. Love as I have loved you. Now that is the new commandment I give to you. Love your neighbor as yourself. That is from the Old Testament. But Jesus' new commandment. And what is that commandment? In order to follow Jesus, you must love as I have loved you. And that's why the disciples knew exactly where Christ defended them, where Christ protected them, when Christ provided them. And that was the real love Jesus showed towards his disciples and the followers. And that's why Jesus said, love as I have loved you. And the last part of the gospel, if you save your life, you will lose your life. If you lose your life, you will save it. This is the normal tendency in our life. Of course, normal instinct we have is to protect ourselves. But Jesus says, for my sake, for my sake. Therefore, dear friends, as we reflect on this gospel passage over and over again during this way, we must understand the first ingredient into strengthen ourselves is spending time in prayer. And that is what Jesus teaches us. And finally, Jesus gives us the essence of Christianity, being his followers, is to carry our daily crosses and the importance of love, loving God and loving our neighbor. Let us ask the Lord during this Holy Eucharist to strengthen us with all these principles of Christ so that we may become truly his faithful followers and disciples. Kindly rise to the close.